Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Fabiane Gonçalves and I will be the facilitator tonight. This webinar is co-sponsored by Mass Energize and the Plug-in Program, which is a 7-town effort to electrify homes and communities in the Metro East region. So before we get started, please take a minute to answer the two questions you will see on your screen right now. Thanks for your response. Tonight, Grace Evans will give a presentation on community solar. After her talk, we will hear a testimonial and then open the floor for questions. You are welcome to wait until the Q&A session or type your question into the chat at any time. With that, I will turn it over to Grace.
Hi, everyone. I can briefly introduce myself. So I work at Sunwealth, and we are a low to moderate income community shared solar provider based in Cambridge. And I'll basically just give a brief kind of overview of what community solar is, and then I'll chat about a couple different providers that are in the area. So I'm going to share my screen, and Fabiani, let me know if a question pops up or if there's any issue with the screen sharing. Okay. Awesome. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All good.
Sounds good. Looks like it. There we go. So I'll first start by just giving a brief kind of community solar overview. So in essence, community solar is a pretty easy way to support local clean energy and save on your annual electricity costs without the installation of any solar panels on your own property. Or, ideally with a lot of these providers, there's no long-term enrollment contracts. So basically, community solar subscribers receive a discount on solar credits that are applied to their electricity bill. A couple ways you can think about this program is it's basically roofless solar because you do not have to install anything on your own property. It's also part of a state-supported energy discount program. So we do this, through Massachusetts legislation and support of utilities. You can also think of it as an online streaming service for solar because there's kind of no installation and you can cancel at any point with many providers. And we're not a third-party alternative supplier. So if you're familiar with the municipal aggregation program or kind of the electricity rate you pay on your bill, that is not altered by joining a community solar program. Here we just have a graphic which kind of explains some of the mechanics of the program. So the first step is a community solar array is built as a part of the state-supported SMART program. And that's where a company like mine, Sunwealth, will kind of finance, own, and operate a community solar array that is connected to your local utility grid. After that, solar array is connected to the local grid. All of the electricity that is generated goes directly into the grid, and it kind of mixes around with all of the different energy sources. The final step of the process is utility customers. So for example, kind of Eversource is the utility in this community. They can sign up with a community solar provider to receive discounted electricity produced by the array. So that's kind of an overview of the program. Happy to answer any questions on that. And I'll now talk about a couple different community solar providers that are based out of Cambridge, and then a company that is used as a resource to connect somebody interested in the program. So the first organization is Energy Sage, which is kind of a nonprofit organization that is not tied to any one community solar provider. So it's an online marketplace where you can compare different solar projects, where you can see, company A and what their discount is they're offering, what the enrollment terms are, and compare it to company B. So there's no kind of financial relationship between this organization, Energy Sage, and any community solar providers. They also have great kind of blogs and videos and educational resources that dive into a lot more of the specifics of the program. I'll now talk about two community solar providers that Mass Energize has partnered with. So the first is NexAmp. They offer kind of a market rate community solar program where there is no income eligibility to join. I will note they do have, and like many community solar providers, due to demand, they do have a bit of a wait time before you can expect to receive crediting if you do enroll. But they do not charge you while you're on that kind of wait list period. They've been around for a long time, and they have, great track record in the industry. The next company is Sunwealth. So that's where I work and where I obviously kind of have the most knowledge. So we are a low to moderate income community shared solar provider based in Cambridge. And, we have projects all across the US, but we, particularly focus on community solar in Massachusetts. So I'll talk to our specific program. There will be some differences from provider to provider, but Energy Sage is also a great resource to learn more about different companies. So through the projects that we currently have open to enrollments, you're basically receiving a 25% discount on local clean energy. So one way you can think about it is for every $1 your Eversource bill is reduced by a solar credit, you are only paying your provider or Sunwealth 75 cents. So that 25% discount kind of never changes throughout your participation in the program. Additionally, we have kind of no enrollment fees or cancellation fees. So unlike, rooftop solar, you can always kind of test the program out. You're not locked into a long-term commitment with a program like this. And finally, community solar is stackable with other energy assistance programs, such as the Eversource discount rate or alternate suppliers like community choice aggregation or fuel assistance or heat pumps. So I mentioned that we offer a low to moderate income community shared solar program, and I'll briefly talk about the two ways that qualify someone to join. So the first is that if somebody lives in a income tagged environmental justice census tract. It's a lot of jargon, but it's basically a map that indicates areas of low to moderate income residents based off census data. So that's one way that somebody could qualify for the program. And then the second is if somebody has enrolled in Eversource's discount rate. And it's a one-page application. We also help interested subscribers enroll for this rate if they qualify. And you basically just have to participate in any means-tested public benefit program, such as food stamps or subsidized housing. And I can also kind of follow up with all this information if anybody's interested in learning more. So the difference between Sunwealth and NexAmp is Sunwealth strictly offers this program to folks who qualify based off their income, while anybody can enroll in NexAmp's program without qualifying. They do offer a slightly lower discount rate just because of the way the program is structured in Massachusetts, but it's still about an average of $275 in annual savings per customer. Fabiani, do you think it'd be okay if I stopped now for some questions, or I can talk a bit longer and then hold till the end?
It is up to you, Grace.
Okay, I see a couple in the chat, so maybe I'll address some before they become less relevant. So I see the first one was answered. So yes, this program is not only offered to lower income households. There's some providers that just offer to low income and some providers that offer to both. Please explain how you could participate if you purchase your electricity through a municipal aggregation program. So that's a great question. So in a municipal aggregation program, your supply rate is altered. So it could be lower or higher, just depending on the program you're enrolled in. If you join a community solar program, we're not actually changing the rate you pay whatsoever. What you will see is a negative dollar amount on the third page of your bill under other charges or credits. So it's this kind of flat dollar amount discount off of your bill, and it's applied to both your delivery and supply charge on your bill. So you can continue to receive the altered rate, and then that kind of final cost you would have paid to the utility is then just discounted by the solar credit.
Just jump.
Another great question. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Grace, this is Ellen, and I'll be doing a testimonial. Signing up for community solar doesn't change your supplier, where your electricity is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
It is a regulatory program by the state that encourages people to support community solar so that we build more solar arrays and get more clean energy jobs. Sunwealth, NexAmp, Ampy, and all these guys who are building projects are putting more green electricity in the grid, and they're getting the credits for that through the SMART program. The way I think about this is it's sort of dollars at a discount. I'm just getting a discount on my electric bill. Good for me, and I'll tell you how much I saved in a little bit. And I'm supporting, I'm showing the marketplace that people want this, so it makes it easier for Grace's company and NexAmp to finance these projects because they can say, look at all these people who want to subscribe. There's demand. Now let's make, because they use a combination of equity and debt to do this, and they need to show the marketplace that people want to buy to subscribe to it. So what we're doing is we're getting a discount on our bill from somewhere between 10% with the market rate for people like me that don't income qualify, around 10-12% varies, or a little over 20% if you meet the income qualification. And Fabiana can show for the folks in Framingham a map of what that might look like in Framingham. But that's how I think about it, Grace. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah. So, we're not altering the rate. It's that blanket dollar amount discount. And what Ellen was getting at also kind of applies to this next question. So somebody asked, if the energy is getting mixed up in the grid, how do we know that we are getting solar power? So that's an important distinction. So all of the solar power produced does get kind of mixed up into the grid. So you're continuing to receive your electricity from Eversource, from the electricity they have on hand, but you are supporting the development of additional clean energy in your local electricity grid. So like Ellen was saying, kind of having subscribers purchase these credits and save on their electricity also promotes the building of additional solar projects in your local electricity grid. Okay, I see we have a handful of more questions in the chat. I may continue on. just to see if any of what I say next answers these questions, and then we'll make sure to address them all at the end. So now we'll talk a bit about kind of a general enrollment experience somebody may have with community solar, pointing out that it will be different from provider to provider. So the NexAmp enrollment experience will be different from the Sunwealth enrollment experience. The first thing that somebody might do, kind of like what all of you are doing right now, when they're interested in joining community solar, is to learn more about the program. So ways somebody could do this is by checking out different websites, blogs, project spotlights, and videos. Energy Sage is a really great resource to get information that isn't kind of partial to a certain company. But you can also meet people who work at these companies at tabling events, at kind of farmers markets or fairs, or webinars just like this one. Additionally, you can chat with a representative. So Energy Sage makes it pretty easy to kind of call someone from the company and learn more. But if you know that you want to enroll in Sunwealth or NexAmp or Ampion, you can also find yourself on their website, and they should make it pretty easy to find a phone number or an email to get connected to someone like me to learn more about the program. And then in terms of enrollment, so the first thing that you'll do is submit an interest form on a provider's website. Maybe you first went to Energy Sage and then found yourself on a provider's website. But the first thing we'll want to know is kind of your name, your address, a contact information, and then a copy of a recent Eversource electric bill. And the reason we want that copy is for me to understand if you qualify as low to moderate income, and also to understand how much electricity you use in a year. So on the second page of your bill, on the left-hand side, we can actually see the kilowatt hours you used each month for a year. And that helps us get an understanding of how much you spend on electricity in one full year. Once we have that information and we know you qualify, your provider will provide you with or send over a contract. And this is where you want to compare the different providers to see what terms are the most suitable for you. But the Sunwealth contract is, free enrollment, free cancellation at any point, and it outlines what your first year expected savings and payments are. So that's the first thing.
With one thing, the reason it's important for them to look at how much electricity you're using is we don't want to generate more credits than you could use. So we don't want to, when you're subscribing to community solar, you're basically buying a percentage of the output of the solar array. It's not like you're getting a panel. They're saying, based on your use, Ellen, I see you use X number of kilowatts over the course of a year. So I'm going to size your subscription to net out the maximum amount of benefits, credits I can get. I don't want you to end up with extra credits on your bill beyond a year. Grace will probably talk about seasonality, but that's why they're looking at that, so they can kind of right size you for your subscription.
Yeah, one way we think about it is we want to cover about 85% of what you spend on electricity in a year with solar credits. And that buffer just makes it so, yeah, what Ellen was saying, we're not providing you with vastly more credits than you will use in a year. And I'll also note any credits that you don't use in a given month. And that basically means like if your bill to Eversource was $100, but you got $110 solar credit that month, that $10 of extra credit will be applied to your next bill. So yeah, that's a bit about seasonality. We can chat a bit more about that in the Q&A. But the next thing that you may be asked for in the enrollment process is payment method. And some folks will be kind of confused at this step because, I thought I was already paying my Eversource bill. But what I'll speak to next is Massachusetts has a dual billing system for community solar, which basically just means you will be receiving two bills to cover your electricity costs each month. but you will still be saving money through the participation in the program. I'll speak more to that, and I have some photos, but that will be kind of a part of your enrollment process. And then the last thing is a provider may ask you to provide ongoing bill access, where we basically can view your bills and see if your electricity usage kind of drastically changes at any point. You know, if somebody installs a heat pump and uses more, or invests in kind of installation and uses less, that can all impact how many solar credits you might need throughout the year. So this is kind of one of the last things I'll speak to before turning it more into discussion-based is admittedly one of the more confusing parts of the program. So this is the community solar billing structure. And so the first step in the process is the community solar provider, so let's just say Sunwealth, will enroll 20 people in our new community solar project. Once we're ready, we will provide that list of subscribers to our local utility, so Eversource, with your name, your address, and your Eversource account number, and the percent of electricity from the array that we would like to be applied to your bill each month. So that kind of goes back to what Ellen was mentioning. We might have, Ellen as the first subscriber receiving 5% of all the power produced, and Grace receiving 10%, just based off our electricity usage. So the second step of the process is the utility will put solar credits from the solar array onto the subscriber's bill each month, significantly reducing the cost to the utility. And that solar credit is directly related to how much electricity the solar array produces and your percent allocation that the provider put down for you. The last step of the process is you'll receive an invoice from your community solar provider for the solar credit you received on your bill at a discount. So I just put the percent sign because it changes depending on which provider you have, but the discount will not change throughout the life of your participation in the program. So that 25% discount from Sunwealth will be locked in for your entire involvement in the program. The next thing I'll show is basically a visual of one billing cycle. This will kind of change month to month as the amount of solar energy will change month to month. But in this example month, Jane Smith had a $200 bill that was owed to Eversource, their local utility. What you can see is on the bottom of their bill, a net metering credit of $170 reduced their bill down to $30. Like I mentioned, we aim to cover about 85% of a subscriber's total bill. So this is why you still may have, a small amount due to the utility, even after you received your solar credit for that month. So before I switch to the next slide, the recap is you would originally have had a bill of $200, but it was reduced by a $170 solar credit. And after that happened, you still owed $30 to the utility. The next step in the process is you will be invoiced by your community solar provider for the credit at a locked-in discount. So in this example, the subscriber is receiving a 25% fixed discount on all solar credits. So they were invoiced $127. Here on the right, you can kind of just see the overview of what this subscriber would experience without community solar and with community solar. So before they enrolled in this program, they had a $200 bill to the utility. After they enrolled in this program, they had a $30 bill to the utility, and then a $127 bill to their community solar provider. And that is because they received a 25% discount on a net metering credit of $170. At the end of the day, their total cost for the month went from $200 to $157, and they saved $43. I know that's kind of a lot of numbers and data, so I'm happy to review any of this in the Q&A, and I can share kind of some example FAQ documents after as well. The last thing I'll say before I'll kind of transition to a discussion is, why has Mass Energize partnered with NexAmp and Sunwealth? Both of these community solar providers kind of focus on making community partnerships. And I'm sure you can kind of see more of these partners on each of our respective websites. But we definitely think a better approach to reaching folks is through partnerships with local leaders and showing up kind of in person or in events like these to really explain the program.
Thanks,
Okay,
Grace.
yeah, hopefully that wasn't too much of me talking at you, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
So yeah, before we move on, I just would like to share, if you can stop sharing your screen, thank you. Share this map where sometimes you are not a low-income household, but depending where you live, you automatically qualify for Sunwealth, for example. So let's say I just entered a random address in Framingham, and it fell in this green area. So if you click in this color, you will see the criteria income. Or if you go to the blue area, you also see income as a criteria. So if you live in those areas, then you automatically qualify for Sunwealth, so you can get like more discount on solar credits. So don't worry, I'm going to share the recording of this webinar and all the links and resources available. So with that said, I'll stop sharing. And before we open the floor for questions, I would like to call Ellen Ton of Wayland to share a testimonial regarding community solar.
Great. Thanks, Fabiani and Grace. So I'll be super brief because I can see, and then this will give you time, Grace, to look at the questions. So I have subscribed to NexAmp, and I know a bunch of you are on the wait list, and Fabiani will get in touch with Mike Spiro at NexAmp to, see how much longer the wait list is. But I've been a subscriber. My husband and I have subscribed for 2 years. So on the NexAmp site, I log in and I can see I've saved, $237.69 over the 2 years. So more than $250 a year. And that's great for me. It tells me the emissions avoided and it shows me the project I'm subscribed to. So I actually know where it is, and that makes me feel good because I know where the project is. The other thing I can see, and this really gets to this billing thing, which is I can show you guys, I'm not logged into my Eversource bill, but you can see how much I've been paying. And it ranges sort of like 160, 130, 160, but you can see some months are less. This one is 80. So that meant the array did not produce as much solar and electricity in that month, because I'm buying a percentage of the output, because Grace and folks at NexAmp like Mike have sized my system. So you can see the numbers vary. You can see, the payment and my invoice. So you will see when you subscribe that you get a different amount each month, because again, it's a percentage of the output. And then I get a credit on my bill that's 110% of what I'm paying NexAmp. So I get one bill for X and I get a credit of X plus 10%. For me and for John and I, we have solar on our house. So it doesn't matter. I have solar. I just want to get a discount on my electric bill and I want to support a clean energy economy. So I have solar, and I'm on my aggregation plan. And again, I can bundle all of these things. It just doesn't matter because I'm not changing my supplier. I am buying what's called net metering credits, and I am getting those credits at a discount. So basically, I'm paying 90 cents for every dollar of my bill. is the way I think about it. Some of you asked, you're on the wait list for NexAmp. And in addition to what Grace said, Fabian and Mass Energize did an RFP to identify some solar providers. So if you want to see who else is in your area, you go to this link. You can just Google, and Fabiani or if Grace can put it in the chat, just Google Energy Saves Community Solar. And I just did it for my zip code in Wayland, and it's dynamic, and you can see the various companies offering stuff in my area. And you definitely want to pick ones that have no cancellation free fees, which is pretty much all. So you can see Sunwealth is listed here. And this one has income criteria, right? This one by Ampion, no income criteria. Perch is also income criteria, but this one is not. So if you don't think you meet income criteria, right, Grace, you would pick the ones that have no income criteria. And if you do that, it just gets started. I put Grace in the spot a little and say, I know Ampion, and have, they've run good programs for years. Perch just merged with who, Grace? Acadia, which has been around for a long time. So these are organizations that have been around for a while. So you would just get started with them, and you can, they'll give you, it'll send you to their site, and they'll give you an estimate of if there a wait list and the estimate on savings. So it's a pretty easy marketplace. I just want to nuance something that Grace said, which is, I believe, and tell me if it's not true, Grace, these providers, if they get leads from the site, do send some money back to Energy Sage as a way of Energy Sage funding its operation. But Energy Sage is neutral, and these stars are based on reviews from people who have signed up. And they do have a good site that helps you understand a little bit more about community solar, and they will talk to you on the phone. So for those of you that ask the question, I've been on the wait list too long, this would be the place to go. And Fabiani will get a sense of how long you're on the wait list for NexAmp. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say. Nope, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and thanks for calling that out, Ellen. I might just not have been aware that there was some sort of kickback, but I've been on webinars with Energy Sage in the past, and they definitely make it very clear they're, don't have allegiance to any one provider. Awesome. Is it okay if I now kind of address some of the questions in the chat and,
Yes, of course. Yes.
raise a hand if there's something else that pops up? So I believe we left off. I see someone named Ellen asked, I have a solar panels. My normal bills are usually under $10. Would this make sense for me? So like Ellen had initially said, she has solar panels on her own property, and it seems like you still have a payment to Eversource, though her utility at the end of the day, where it does make sense for her to participate. I honestly would say if your bills are under $10, it may not make a ton of sense to join. If I saw a bill that kind of had around $10 a month, like we could assign you solar credits of $1 or $2 each month, and then you would pay us, 75 cents each month, which, in theory might just be more admin than savings or kind of supportive clean energy. But it's totally up to you. I don't think you'd get turned away if you did want to enroll. Is there any way to make a donation to this solar farm to be dedicated to income qualified households? I want to make a donation to offset airplane travel. That's a great question. I believe there are organizations that do run programs like that, carbon offset programs. Through my work at Sunwealth, I have not run into anyone looking to make this type of donation. We get additional state funding to build low to moderate income community shared solar programs. But I don't have any website to recommend for carbon offsets, but I do believe there are some good organizations.
Let me just ask you this, Grace. Could somebody just donate to Sunwealth? Do you have a way if somebody wanted to just?
Yeah, so nobody has reached out to do that before, but what the CEO of my company is in great support of is something called no cost solar. So this is where we would, enroll someone in the program, but instead of charging them for solar credits at a discount, they would just receive the solar credits for free. And so there needs to be some restructuring of a raise like this just to make it still financially possible for organizations like ours. Um, but if you said you wanted to donate, $100 a month or $10 a month to a low to moderate income household, we could certainly take that off somebody else's bill, and use that as an offset. So I'd be happy to chat more. I think everyone would be happy to support an initiative like that. Somebody asked, I assume I would need to back out of my contract with a different out-of-state renewable energy provider for the energy side of our utility bill if we want to sign up for community solar. So in that instance, if you are in an alternate supplier, maybe you get Clearview Energy as your electricity supplier, you would not have to back out of that. You could remain enrolled in that program and also enroll in community solar. But if you are in a community solar program that maybe the company is out of state and they just build in your community, you may want to cancel your subscription just because if you're enrolled in more than one community solar provider, you might get more solar credits than you need because the two people are working independently.
I don't, but Doug, and I know Doug, so your question is you've got a third-party provider. You're not with Eversource Bacon Service, and for some reason you chose not to go with our aggregation program in Wayland. I don't know, Doug. But community solar still works for him, even though he's got a third-party provider, you're saying, just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Will the solar rate always be lower than the municipal aggregated rate because of the discount? So that's kind of where there's this important difference between a supply rate, which we won't change your supply rate or alter it, and this solar discount where you're basically receiving, a negative dollar charge on your bill, and then a second bill where you receive a discount on the value of the credit. So you can kind of think of them as two completely separate programs that don't really engage with each other all that much. Energy Sage Online says my home address can't go through. Any other advice in addition to NexAmp, who I've been waiting for a year? I know for Sunwealth, like we are only offering community solar subscriptions in Eversource territory at the moment. So if you receive an Eversource bill, there should be providers that are able to enroll you in their program. So that's where I may suggest reaching out to, Perch and Arcadia and Sunwealth and just kind of seeing what the different wait times are, or seeing if they have projects in your area. I'm happy to, if you wanted to follow up with me separately, I'm happy to kind of confirm if you are qualified for an Eversource community solar project.
You should be able to just put your zip code into Energy Sage. I think maybe you're in grid and nobody has grid projects right now. But you could also just pick up the phone and call Energy Sage and say, make sure I'm reading this right. But that's the other choice would be to go to some of these other ones like Perch and Ampion, NexAmp, and see how long their wait lists are. Did you
Yeah,
miss
and then
one? Did you miss one from TL at 729 or?
I think that's my next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there any shady providers or scammers to watch out for in this space? Does Energy Sage weed those out? It's a great question. I think in the energy space, there's always, bad actors, as supply rates have become open to supply or to competition. I would say almost all of the providers I see on Energy Sage are pretty well-known community solar providers and have been established and around for a long time. I think I would be generally wary of like a door-to-door knocker or something that comes in the mail. And if somebody reaches out to you about a community solar provider, you can always reach out to like your local municipal leader to see if like they're aware of any scams in the area, or call up Energy Sage. Like there are people who will give a second opinion if you're unsure about a deal, or somebody who has offered you a high savings rate. I wish I could list off a couple companies off the top of my head, but I don't have any that I would say to specifically watch out for.
I mean, I will say that Energy Sage does get reviews from people that have had experiences. So if they hear that customers are not satisfied, they do investigate it. And at least in the rooftop solar situation, I think they have removed people.
Mhm.
As we looked at my screen, I think the companies currently listed in 01778, which is Eversource East, I'm in Wayland, are companies that have been around for a bit. So that's what we know about them.
Awesome. The next one I see is there any risk that one could end up paying more than if they did not roll in community solar? So this is a great question, and we didn't talk too much about this phenomenon called seasonality. So Ellen and I mentioned that we will under allocate, where we only want to cover about 85% of what we think you'll spend on electricity in a year. And that's to create a buffer where we don't want to provide you with vastly more credits than you'll use. The other thing to note is in the summer months, when the days are longer and there's more sun, your solar credits are going to be larger. It's going to be a larger dollar amount that will lower your Eversource bill. And in the winter months, those credits will be smaller just because of cloud coverage and shorter days. It is important to say, like, any dollar net metering credit or solar credit that is applied to your bill will roll over to your next bill if you don't use it all. So even if you're receiving a larger credit than you could use and you cancel your community solar subscription, you're unhappy with how many solar credits you've been allocated, you won't lose out on the solar credits. They'll continue to be applied to your next bill. And you might not have any payment due to Eversource for a couple of months. I know I touched on a couple things there, but there's no risk that you would pay more, period, as long as the company is doing good work and providing you the discount that is outlined in the contract. But there may be some months where your solar credit is larger than your total amount due to Eversource, but it will always roll over to the next month. Ellen, I don't know if there's anything you want to emphasize there as well, but I hope I kind of touched. Okay.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is if you're planning on moving in the next 4 to 6 months, don't sign up for this program.
Mhm.
You gotta sort of imagine you're gonna be someplace for like at least a year, because once you say you want to leave, it takes them a few months to get you off because the utilities don't let them do it every day. They have intervals when they're allowed. But otherwise, this sort of answered someone's questions, can I, arrange an off taker if I have extra credits? If Grace is doing her job well, which I'm sure she is, you will not have extra credits over the course of the year. If that's the case, they've oversized your subscription and it should be adjusted. And there are reasons, maybe something changed in your house. But there should be there's no ability for you to reassign the net metering credits, like maybe to another household, but that's just let's not even get into that. You should not, over the course of a year, be generating more credits than you can use. And that's on the provider to size it correctly. We had a colleague of ours, Fabiani and I, whose subscription was oversized, and the community solar, he was looking at his bills like, I had too many credits, and they talked about it and they said, yep, we're going to reduce your output. So that's easy to adjust.
Mhm. Awesome. I see a message where, can you discuss how a community group might set up a community solar program and install and own community solar, or partner with the developer to build an array? Yeah, that's a great question. That is less what Sunwealth does. Like, we will finance, own, and operate a community solar array, and then, partner with groups to find subscribers to purchase the power. But I know there are scenarios where a nonprofit will kind of fundraise and people will buy into ownership of the array. that's just not how, we structure it. Some folks don't want to commit to like a long-term ownership model, but I'm happy to, if you reach out to me personally, I do know of one project. I'll just have to find the link, but I'm happy to kind of chat more about that structure as well. Is there a financial risk to me if the solar array suffers catastrophic damage? Nope. It's a great question. So if a tree falls on our solar array and we have to turn it off for a month and we can't produce any solar power, what will happen is you probably just won't see a net metering credit on your bill that month. But you also won't receive any invoice for that respective month. It may just, be as if you weren't enrolled in that month. But I do know, like in Sunwealth's case, if we have a project shut down and we know it's not going to turn on for a long time, we will work to A, get it turned back on as fast as we can, and B, maybe move subscribers to a different array just to ensure that you're still receiving the savings, but you're not on the hook for any, you don't have to go out and clean up the tree or anything like that, or pay any fees for that. How do I see the income eligibility requirements? Can I filter on plans that do not have an income requirement? I'm not sure on Energy Sage. I do know they have that little tag, but I'm not sure if there's a way to just, filter them all out at once.
There is no way to filter, but there you can see that it's income qualified under the description.
Awesome. And I know some providers might just not have a project up on Energy Sage. Maybe they just haven't, shared that information with them. So you may receive kind of a different project assignment if you reach out to a developer directly. When the webinar ends, can you get, yep, I see Fabiani just answered that. So I think we'll send out, not me, but Fabiani and Ellen will send out a copy of all of this information. Scott asked, are the credits transferred under a standard Schedule Z process? Yes, so I think there actually was a terminology change. So it went from a Schedule Z to an AOBC list. But I basically will submit to the utility, a list of 20 names, their allocation, and their address. And that is what the utility will use for the next month when determining who gets a solar credit. This is very helpful. A question, are there tax implications? Is it taxable income? Of the community solar discounts, would a tax form be issued annually for IRS filing? Which one? I'm just gonna say no. I have never heard of this and nobody has asked me this question, but I can confidently say there's no, tax follow-up. It's kind of like,
no,
even like a Netflix subscription. Like there's nothing that holds you to this program outside of your monthly billing and crediting. Awesome. What about a company like Royalty Renewables? They seem to be player trying to help get people signed up. They have door-to-door. Great question. So companies like Arcadia, they will do community solar enrollment, and they'll work with, different developers who build projects, and they will basically fill their projects with subscribers. Maybe they want it done by May 2026, and Arcadia will say, we will do it by May 2026. So Arcadia might then turn around to a company like Royal Renewables. I've never heard of this company, so don't quote me, but they might turn around to a company that does door knocking and say, we need 20 subscribers by May 2026. So these like door-to-door salespeople, it's possible they're trying to enroll subscribers for larger companies. I would just say if you're unsure, reach out to Energy Sage, reach out to your municipality.
I would say go to Energy Sage versus we have no due diligence on them. Grace and I have never heard of them. Just can't give you any information about that. So they're working for some developer theoretically, but I have no idea.
Sorry to interrupt. I know we have a few more questions to go, but please answer 4 more questions before people start leaving. It's gonna be very fast.
Okay, I can be quick. Oh, no, this is for you. Okay, sorry. I do see another question, and I can just try to really quickly if people are done with the earlier poll. Scott asked, does the new Eversource portal make the allocations faster and easier? Yes, it makes it a lot faster and a lot easier. So if Scott calls me tomorrow and says, I need to cancel my subscription, or I just installed heat pumps and I need way more credits, I can then upload a new allocation list that same day. And then the next billing cycle, that allocation change will be in effect. So it's quite quick to make adjustments compared to how it used to be. Is there a list of projects that don't have a wait list? I'm honestly not. I don't believe Energy Sage has that information. I know Sunwealth has some projects that, we need someone to join right now, and some projects that we need to wait 5 or 6 months. So I think that would be a question for the specific developer.
I think if they know, like you can see in my zip code when I type in NexAmp isn't coming up because Mike and those guys have a long wait list. So if they're listed, I think you just got to hit the get started and you'll find out. But they shouldn't be listing if they really have a very, very long wait list. But we'll see.
Scott has a question. Does Sunwealth track the amounts that are billed by Eversource to know if the allocation is too much, or is that the responsibility of the homeowner? So that's a great question. We do not have access automatically to somebody's Eversource bill unless they take the extra step to grant us ongoing bill access. So some folks don't have an online portal, like they just haven't signed up for one. And so in that case, we will size their initial allocation, and then maybe a year later, I'll call somebody up and say, would you mind sending us an updated copy of your bill? Or, are you happy with the credits you're receiving? If somebody does have an online portal, we have something called Bayou Energy, who we partner with. And it's a one-time connection where, Fabiani will log into her Eversource account through Bayou Energy. And then I can go on to the portal and, view her bill each month. I can't make any updates or changes, but I can see how much the credit reduced her bill. I can see what her total cost to the utility was. And that's really helpful for me because I can see if somebody is receiving too many credits or their usage has gone up. And it's really not that often that somebody's receiving too many credits. The only scenario I've seen it is when somebody kind of moves out or and doesn't let us know, which is, understandable, but their usage will go from like 300 kilowatt hours to 0. And that's when we want to just be able to check the bills every once in a while and reach out. I think that was all of our questions, which is great. If there's any other questions, feel free to send them in the chat, or you can follow up with me about Sunwell specific questions or Ellen and Fabiani.
Or shout them out right now. We have
Yeah.
3 more minutes.
Any other question? We still have 3 minutes.
I just want to say great job, Grace. Like I think this is unfortunately like more complicated than one feels it should be because of these 2 bills. But at least in my case, I can see how much I'm saving, and I check my Eversource thing like twice a year, so I can make sure I don't have extra net metering credit. I do think it's rare if they've done a good job of sizing your system.
Somebody asked a great question. If there are wait lists, can I sign up for more than one? And I say sign up for all of them, like, and then if you get off multiple wait lists or if you get off one, maybe just go out and reach out to the different providers and say, you can take me off the wait list. But I say, enroll in multiple. Okay, awesome. Last question I had asked about an exchange. Is there any such thing for solar owners with too many net metering credits? So I guess if you're meaning solar on your like rooftop solar that you built, I'm less familiar about that, honestly. I kind of stay in the community solar world myself, but Ellen may know as a rooftop
Somebody
solar.
else already replied yes. Who replied yes?
I think that was Scott indicating that I was on the right track with the whole
Yeah,
rooftop solar thing.
I'm not 100% sure of that, Scott. I think if you have another house, you can allocate it to another house, but I don't know if you can allocate it to something that is not your household. I would ask your solar installer.
Mhm. I see another question. If I sign up now after getting out the waiting list, when my subscription starts. So if you get off the waiting list and you get an email from your provider saying, congratulations, you're assigned to a project and you're off the waiting list, it should only be 1 to 2 months before you start seeing credits. So if Ellen were to enroll with Sunwealth's community solar program today, we have one project that is a little undersubscribed. So I could add her to our AOBC list today, and then she would see a credit on her bill in 1 to 2 Eversource billing cycles. But if I added her to our upcoming project, it would be closer to 3 to 4 months, depending on how fast Eversource and gets going.
There's one more question here.
Yeah, no, these are great questions. So, Scott asked, what happens to your credits if you are undersubscribed? So, like in this scenario, we have a project, it's about at 98%. We're just looking for a couple more subscriptions to get to 100. And all of the extra dollars that are produced that are not assigned to someone's bill basically sit on our host bank. So each month I get a report from the utility that shows all the subscribers and all the credit values. That's what we use for invoicing. And we can also see how much money is in our host bank. And it will go up each month if we're undersubscribed. But we can do, a one-time transfer where one of our partners has capacity for more credits and we can put them all on somebody else's bill and charge at a discount so we can still monetize those credits. Alternatively, if we are unable to find anyone to kind of purchase those credits at a one-time transfer, we will get a cash out from the utility at the end of the year, where they, give us some money back and then our host balance goes back to 0. So that's kind of what happens to us, but we are not able to update any allocation lists that are under 90%. So all of our projects need to have at least 90% subscribed to off-takers. I believe it's kind of a courtesy thing from Eversource. So they call it, a one-time courtesy transfer. And that's separate from the annual cash out. And I think they have some discounts, but I forget off the top of my head how much we're getting from the utility.
And I think Scott, goal is never to be in that situation. We want to, if you guys know folks who, Fabiani will send a map, maybe even a static map of Framingham where Mass Energize is doing a lot of work. So if you know folks who live in Framingham, there are decent amounts of Framingham that have census tracts that automatically qualify. I will say regrettably in Wayland, there are none. I haven't looked at I haven't looked at Acton and some of these other places, but there's really good interactive maps. So even if it's not you, there may be a friend, a neighbor, someone in your faith-based organization, someone you know. We have a lot of seniors who are on certain income rates with the utilities who can qualify. If you know anybody living in subsidized housing, they would automatically qualify. So please spread the word, because it's a pretty big savings on your bill if you can. And we have a good partnership with Sunwealth. They're really responsive. So and there's capacity. You have room in some of these projects. So
some people are surprised, to find that they live in a qualified zone. So it is definitely a range, low to moderate, and definitely folks have not thought they would qualify, and then they do. So you can always submit an interest form, and I'll get back to you.
Right. Thanks, Grace, again for your presentation. Thanks, Ellen, for your contributions, and thanks to everyone who joined us. I will be sending all the recording, all resources, and links for you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Fabiani. Thanks, Ellen.